ideas and statistics, and then you're like, okay, great, but what do I do with that? So let's talk first about the trends. One of my favorites, mobile. So just to give you an idea, and I mean obviously everybody has his or her own phone right now, but just so you understand really the power of what we're talking about. 2/3 of Americans have smartphones. So you figure if that's 300 million of us right now, you only have to do the math. But here's where I think it gets really interesting. 27 hours a month are spent on computers as opposed to 34 hours a month on apps on the mobile phone. And I'm getting this as well from one of my favorite tech blogs called Engadget. So this is one of the first times that we're starting to see kind of paradigm shift over in terms of usage and behavior from the laptop onto mobile. So it's indispensable. It's being utilized all the time. And so I want to talk again a little bit more later about how and why it should be integrated into conferences in a little bit more of an effective or beneficial way. But this is why, because we're on these things like all the time. How can you leverage them within different conferences? The next trend that is very much utilized in personal and professional kind of digital life, if you will, is the Messenger, right? So Facebook Messenger alone, 200 million users. Snapchat, 100 million. And one of my favorites, WhatsApp, for 600 million users on their Messenger app. Messaging should be utilized wherever you can in business because we're already using it. We're already accustomed to it. These statistics, by the way, are coming from something called Digital Media Ramblings, which I love them. They're a leading blog as well. But messaging, huge, huge trend that we want to be able to talk more about in depth in a few more moments. The next is certainly NFC. So NFC stands for Near Field Communication. So anytime you've ever used, for example, the Metro here in DC and you touch that device, that's NFC, right? And so it's just growing and it is forecast to grow even further, 38% by this time next year alone. NFC is just going to be larger and larger as we move through our day, and it's going to be integrated as well with mobile pay and et cetera. NFC, definitely a win for being able to think about using within conferences. And then finally, well no, I have one more actually, wearables, which is actually going to be just one of my favorite kind of sub-segments to study at the moment. I'm also being asked by AdTech to create a strain for their conference just on the upcoming intersection of wearables and advertising alone. Wearables is forecast, let me just make sure I get this right for you because the number is so huge, $3 billion, forecast to be a $3 billion business by 2015. And these statistics are coming from Adobe, so pretty well, I guess, credible. But wearables, whether you're talking about the glasses, Fitbit, et cetera, and there's so much more to them. Whether we're talking about kind of like removable tattoos, which will resemble skin, et cetera, being able, smart fabrics, clothing, wearables are going to be insanely huge, and there are ways to be able to work them into your conference, believe it or not, as well. And then the final trend that I want to quickly address, and there are certainly many others, but these are just some of my top picks, are, of course, the virtual appearance, I'm calling it, right? So whether it's Google Hangout, Skype video, et cetera, and for example, Skype, 300 million users and counting right now on Skype, and it's going to be even larger, I think, given the fact that they have translation capability coming up through Skype. No reason why this couldn't and shouldn't be utilized within conferences in a very creative way. I'm going to talk more about how to be able to leverage all of these things now in just a few moments. But it really is about how can you take the intersection of these trends and the usage and be able to insert them into conferences, meetings, etc., to be able to get things accomplished the way that you want them to be able to deepen the engagement of the attendee, to understand more about who is actually attending, and like I said, to be able to create more revenue streams, to drive those sponsorships, to give exhibitors something that is new and different, that encourages them to be able to spend money with you, essentially. let's talk about some of those actionable items. But I want to say quickly why I think these are actionable, right? Because I see a conference planner's goals or responsibilities to be pretty much three things. One is to enable the conversation of the attendees, right? That's why people are coming together, because they want to be able to exchange information, get education, etc. But of course, you want to be able to enable that. But in addition to that, the conference planner should want to be able to do what we call in technology, to mine or capture data as much as possible about the attendee, beyond just like their position, where they work, and their phone number, right? You want to get deeper with this, just like we do in the commercial world, about being able to better understand, since you have the tech that can enable this, better understand about their needs. Who's really coming to these conferences? Why and what is it that they want, beyond just the standard survey, which many people are not filling out. Anyway, these tech platforms can help you to be able to do that. And then finally, it's about being able to utilize time more efficiently, right? Both yours and that of the attendees. So that's really kind of the context as to why I'm giving you these particular actionable items that hopefully, in the spirit of the theme of the conference, that elevate your game. So I'm going to give you, as I said, three. The first is rather basic, then we'll move into one that's like more intermediate, and then one that's like kind of high-powered. So first is the wonderful QR tag, right? If we've already, let's just assume, got the hashtag down, and you have maybe the mobile app, what have you. But I really want to talk about the QR tag because it enables you to do a variety of things that I haven't really seen fully expanded just yet within a conference that I think can be very, very helpful. It also depends, of course, on what type of conference you have, what you're doing with it, etc. But QR tags can just hold a world of information through just a small, small space. And I actually find them more, I don't know, just more like almost user-friendly than an app that's designed for a particular conference. Sometimes even and I love technology, I don't want to like learn something for like a half day or a day or whatever. But if I scan that QR tag, everything will go right into the device in which I want it to go. And you can load it with so much content that it's wonderful. This also becomes another great avenue potentially for revenue, because maybe some of your potential sponsors don't necessarily want a table, but they want content delivery or ways to be able to deliver certain information. Maybe it's coupons, maybe it's an experience, maybe it's video. That can all be loaded right through the QR tag. And by the way, almost anything that I'm telling you about right now is not something that should be cost prohibitive, right? Anybody, any techie worth his or her salt should be able to backload any of this for you. It just depends on how much content needs to be on there or not. But just to give you additional ideas, this can be used as well for greater information just even about food. I'm one of those horrible people who's like, is it gluten-free? Is it, is it organic? Is it not? Whatever. Even today's wonderful lunch, I would have loved to know that it was crab because I'm allergic to shellfish before. All those types of things give your attendee a lot more information, but all of this kind of almost wonderful touchy-feely stuff that we're getting from even male speakers. I love this. Whether you were here able to hear the gentleman talking about Nice Guys Finish First earlier today, or the wonderful, Joe Theismann talking about warmth and showing people that you care and all that stuff. That content is no joke. And if you're able to put that right into the hand of your attendee, you really, really appreciate it. So you have like a balancing, right, of information, maybe from exhibitors, sponsors, etc., through this that they wouldn't be able to get maybe physically, as well as being able to give you more information additionally about the conference that may not be appropriate paper-wise. It's great for video, and I'm going to talk more about how important and what is happening with video exploding more and more on mobile, so you want to be able to offer that and make it engaging. It's a way to alleviate so much of this paper. I was asked recently to do a bit of consulting for a half-day event that was going to take place on the Hill. They had like probably a stack of papers like this that they wanted to give to attendees. And And I was like, you know what? Let's load all that onto a QR tag. It makes you look modern. It keeps in mind that the attendee is already probably weighed down with a lot of things as well. It's giving a more modern experience that's already inserted into the lifestyle of the person who is attending as well. Not to say to get rid of paper. I'm never going to be one of those techies that's like, it's all over for, old school paper. But it's about integrating and offering options. So the QR tag, I think, is a great place to start if maybe you're just getting your feet wet with thinking about like tech platforms, or want to try something out, want to try something to be able to expand just the experience for sponsors and to be able to test it out. The great thing about this as well is that you can also use it for call to action too. That will be able to enable just different types of activities, etc., that you want your attendees to be able to experience as they go through the conference. So much could be held within just this small item. It should be on all the communications materials from the website on up and on down. But here's one of the key takeaways about QR tags. Not to just throw it out there, but let me know what are some of the things I might get, like if I scan this, or how do I scan it? Maybe if I'm dealing with, might be an older demographic for attendees. This is something that is really a pet peeve about the QR tag for me, because people assume that everybody's just going to know what to do with it. And I see you shaking your head, so you must like really know. But yeah, it's very important to just think about like a little bit of seduction there. What are some of the things that I'm going to get in there? If there are coupons, etc., special experiences. Yes, go ahead.
I just have a question.
Sure.
Say we put all of our slides up and then they access it through the QR code. Could we go back on the back end and see who accessed what and like?
Absolutely, and that's what I was just about to get to. So this is definitely about, so this is one of the ways, and each of the ways I'm going to talk about, each of the three, should definitely be utilized for data mining, so you can see what has been downloaded, what hasn't, how quickly it was even open. You can design this any type of way that you want, depending on what your expectations are, or that of your partners, sponsors, etc., so that you have as much information through it as possible. Absolutely. So that is just a bit about the first item, and I'm going to try and hurry up because I'm going to try and bring one of the execs from Microsoft in to be able to speak to something else. So I'm going to fly through a bit of this quickly because he's waiting. The next is RFID. Is anybody familiar with RFID, what it does with radio frequency? I love this because I kind of consider it's like radar networking. So we all have our badges on, at least mine's in my bag, and that's kind of usually where they stay, unfortunately. I'm not a fan of the badge. Even if I have to go to like, a company, and you have to check in and you get the little, and I go through the elevator and I shove it wherever it goes because it's just not really doing anything for me. But if you told me that my name badge was enabled with RFID, I'd probably put like 10 of them on. Here's how it can work. You have people fill out a pre-questionnaire, and this kind of goes back to what was said, I think, during one of the morning sessions that I had an opportunity to sit in on, where the women were talking about what is your customer, do you know what your customer really wants? I don't know if any of you were there. And they were saying, what's the incentive for people to, like, especially if my company is paying for it, if I get cheaper early registration, who cares? If you want to incentivize people to do certain things earlier, this can be one of those, and the data capture on this is insane. But so the way that it can be set up, and there are a number of ways, is that you have people fill out a pre-questionnaire with a number of different, whatever it is that's appropriate to your particular conference. So what's the biggest business challenge you have today in healthcare, whatever it might be. Not laborious, maybe keeping it to maximum 10, whatever. So then visualize this. I have on a tag that's RFID enabled, and so do you. When we get near each other, and I've answered a question with the same answer that you have, it lights up. And so now I already know that you and I have something in common. And then it will begin to tell us what it is that we talked about. Now, if you're in a rush or you don't feel like networking or whatever, you don't have to stop and talk. But isn't it a great way to enable conversation as opposed to like looking at somebody's badge like this, or you don't know really maybe whether there's a connection there or not. And I have to say, at some of the more, shall we say, splashy, high-profile conferences like a South by Southwest, whatever, where, you know, there are big players there that don't really want to be talked to per se, this is a way to kind of get through all that. I mean, it's really, I think that it really should be the next thing in name badge scenarios. Who's going to pay for this? It's not very expensive at all. But if you want to obviously offset the cost, what sponsor doesn't want to be part of that and to be able to throw out information about what their product might be through RFID in a certain number of times? Keep in mind all of this kind of mirrors the traditional marketing world as well. So you know, like if you text and say, you know, send me whatever, before you agree to the whole opt-in scenario, it's like, we will send you up to 3 per whatever. This is never, you know, designed to be like, okay, well, we send our attendees about 150 things through RFID, whatever. No, it has to obviously be something that is seen as interesting, engaging, seductive, helpful, but never intrusive. But I do believe that enabling RFID into a name tag, or maybe it's another item, but I just feel like the name tag is ever present and on one's body, almost like a wearable, if you will, is a way to be able to deepen engagement for the attendees. You can get crazy data on the back end for you to be able to understand more about what your attendees want, think, problems, whatever. And then also it is another revenue kind of avenue to be able to include in that silver package or whatever it might be. This also goes back to earlier today where the women were talking about how well do you know your customer, do you know what your customer wants? And they were saying, you know, it should really be about customizing, not just because I need shuttle buses paid for, that is then now part of the silver package and maybe sponsor X doesn't want that, so you lose the money from whoever you're talking to just like that because it's not of interest to them. If you are going to be looking at customizing and offering different things, that's where digital platforms start to come into play. And something like, you know, do you want to test out RFID opportunity or sponsorship with us? That can be something where you really get into customizing. And so the questions can even maybe be related to part of like whoever the sponsor is or exhibitor that wants to work with you on this. But I do believe that RFID within conferences should be highly utilized because it's, like I said, radar networking. Like, who doesn't want that already? The thing is doing the work almost for the attendee. Oh, and just a word about the QR tags. I would definitely have them next to each exhibitor as well. Sometimes you don't have time to stop. Sometimes you don't want to really stop, but like you might want the information. But I also don't want to pack it as well. The QR tag should be next to each and every exhibitor.